You may have noticed since my last Animorphs video I have morphed out of the lion form and back into human. I'm making this video because nothing, other than there will be an Animorphs movie, nothing is set in stone about the form that the Animorphs movie will take, including casting. And so before they do that, and I'm sure that I will fully approve of all the casting choices that they make, I wanted to make some casting choices of my own and explore the potential for some of the characters in Animorphs, and some of the actors who could play them. I will not be casting these characters, the Animorphs themselves. I figure they'll all be unknown kid actors, and that is as it should be. But in a movie like this, where you're probably going to have mostly unknown kid actors in the foreground, in the background, you put the heavy hitters with the heavy hitter experienced actors. And so that's what this video is about. Which of those actors will fill which of the recurring adult roles in this story about kids. And the first, I'll be brief because I've said this in many videos and I don't need to say too much more. I want to get to the other ones, but Andy Serkis as Visser 3/Alaran. It is my opinion that the Andalites should be cast British. The British accent just goes with the Andalite vibe for me. And Andy Serkis is, of course, British, but as Visser 3, I would have him ideally do an American accent, because the Andalites, British, but the Yeerks, whatever. So as Victor Trent, when he morphs Victor Trent, he'd have the American accent. It takes place in America, so it would be part of the blending in. But also, when Visser 3 is in Alaran's head, Alaran's voice comes out with a British accent. On the occasions when Visser 3 is not in Alaran's head, Andy Serkis would revert back to his own British accent. So that's my thinking there. And again, I've said it many times because Andy Serkis is the motion capture actor. He's done other things, great movies where he's not a motion capture character, but this is the ultimate motion capture character role. He can be his human self, his Andy Serkis self, but he can also do motion capture for the Andalite, Alaran's body. But then whatever Visser 3 morphs into, different kinds of motion capture requirements there, and Andy Serkis is your guy. So I'll move on from that because, again, I've said that a lot in a lot of videos, that Andy Serkis should be Visser 3, but Andy Serkis should be Visser 3. This is the only one of the castings that I think might actually happen. But moving on, who should be AlFangore? Well, AlFangore, War Prince Andalite, powerfully built, but they can do whatever he's going to be a CGI creation, so they can do whatever they want with the body. The voice, I feel, and I'm not exactly sure why I'm so convinced of this. Martin Freeman, most well known as Bilbo Baggins from the Hobbit movies, also as Dr. Watson opposite Benedict Cumberbatch on Sherlock, and for me, best known to me personally as the stand-in on the porn set in Love Actually. But here's my reasoning here, because this might not seem, he doesn't perhaps have what most Animorphs fans would consider the stature of a war prince, which again, taken care of in the CGI character body of AlFangore. But Martin Freeman has kind of a reluctant warrior, reluctant hero vibe about him, and that's why he was so great as Bilbo. Doesn't necessarily want to go on the adventures, but will do his duty when called upon to. It will do the important thing. And that's essentially AlFangore. I don't know if they'll get to the Andalite Chronicles, and if they do, and they do younger AlFangore human form, they probably wouldn't cast Martin Freeman for that. But until we get there, AlFangore wasn't necessarily going to fulfill his destiny of becoming the great warrior. He tried to escape it. In the Andalite Chronicles, we hear this story. He tried to become someone else, literally become someone else, and the Ellimist had to convince him to fulfill his destiny, and that is how he became the War Prince. So Martin Freeman can do that with his voice, probably also with his body, but this is mostly a voice role. Um, and I would love to hear it. I think that voice coming out of that character from that actor, they go together. They go together very well in my head, and the head in one's head is where the Andalites speak. Um, so that's and also Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis have a bit of a history of doing scenes together. So their confrontation at the very beginning of the Animorphs movie, I think that chemistry, the fact that that chemistry is already there, would be to their benefit. Another reluctant hero warrior type role that Martin Freeman played is in a movie called, let me see, I had it right, I had it before, um, Cargo. It's a kind of a zombie movie based on a shorter movie um, that I think you can still get on YouTube. But the movie is Cargo, and that's just another of those types of roles that he's played, and which makes me think he'd be perfect for this role. Um, the Ellimist, who convinces him to do his duty and fulfill his destiny. My thinking on the Ellimist is he appears in a different form based on which of the Animorphs is the lead narrator of the story. Now, I don't know, again, how these books and stories are going to be reshuffled for the movie purposes, but the first time the Ellimist appears is in this book, Rachel's second story in the series, The Stranger. I guess the Ellimist is the Stranger. And for that appearance, the first appearance, I would pick Cate Blanchett. And may seem too on the nose of a casting, considering she played Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings, which is not really that similar to the Ellimist, but the appearance and the otherworldliness are in line with the Ellimist. Cate Blanchett has this just thing about her in her roles of something otherworldly, alien, like the ultimate alien. The Ellimist is the ultimate alien who creeps out other aliens. Andalites are afraid of, like, when Axe identifies the Ellimist, and he talks about how most people believe the Ellimist is a fairy tale, or most Andalites believe the Ellimist is a fairy tale. That's the kind of thing that Cate Blanchett can do on a screen. But as I said, different actors portraying the Ellimist at different times, based on which Animorph is the lead of the story. And it's a way also to bring in, for just a short time, maybe the next Ellimist is George Takei, or someone from the Star Wars movies. Bring in the heavy hitters from fantasy, science fiction, not legend, but lore, not lore, the science fiction fantasy canon. Bring in characters from the great science fiction fantasy movies of the past. Bring in those actors for one-offs, but get as many in as you can by casting the Ellimist differently each time. But it would start with Cate Blanchett. Cate Blanchett would be the Ellimist as the Ellimist appears in a Rachel story. So again, possibilities. And if you have someone who you think should play the Ellimist either the whole way through, including the Ellimist's own story, or like who should be the Ellimist in a Marco story, or who should be the Ellimist in the Tobias story when Tobias meets the Ellimist, comment with that. So the only set of parents I'm going to talk about are Marco's parents. They are the most consistently used of the parents of the Animorphs throughout the story. They have more of a role in the story than Rachel's parents, Jake's parents, even arguably Tobias's mom, already cast AlFangore, but Tobias's mom doesn't really show up until the end, and I don't think they'll even bother casting Tobias's aunt and uncle, because the whole point is that they never see each other. They don't care about him. He rarely sees them. That is the whole point of his origin. But Marco's parents, the father grieving the loss of his wife, kind of broken down, and the reason that Marco is so reluctant to get involved because he doesn't want anything to happen to himself, and thereby hurting his father further. That's a role that needs to really anchor the story, anchor Marco's story. The Animorphs have to they know his father, and they know therefore Marco's reluctance and fears. And for that role, I would like to see Benjamin Bratt. Now, Benjamin Bratt, I first got to know him as Detective Curtis on Law & Order, opposite Jerry Orbach's Detective Briscoe, but he's in so many things. Oh, I did the wrong thing there. He's in some. I recently saw him in Demolition Man and some Mission to Mars movie. It might have been called Mission to Mars. I don't know, or maybe Mission to Just Another Planet. But he's in that movie. He's in Doctor Strange. He does a lot. He's usually a secondary character, but he's so great, and I feel like he could bring the gravitas to that role. Also, he plays Manny Delgado's biological father on Modern Family, and Rico Rodriguez, who plays Manny, back when I actually did the thought experiment of casting the actual Animorphs, that kid was my ideal Marco. I think he's probably aged. Haven't seen him lately because I haven't watched the more recent Modern Families. He's probably aged out of consideration for that role, but he was my Marco, and so only stands to reason Marco's father should be played by Benjamin Bratt, but also for other reasons. Now, his mother, Marco's mother, is also Visser 1. So here's a character who is human, but also one of the most feared Yeerks in the galaxy, universe, whatever. And for that role, I'm thinking of Michelle Rodriguez, who some people watching this video may know from the Fast and Furious movies. I don't know her from those because I haven't seen any of those. I will have probably eventually. When I heard that she was involved, my interest got a little bit higher in those movies. But I know her from Avatar and from Lost and from Girl Fight and several other things, and she's really tough. Probably why she fits in so well in the Fast and Furious movies. She just has a tough aura, and kind of a warrior aura, and Visser 1, a feared leader of the Yeerks. So I think that she would be great in that role. And also when, again, spoiler alert, but when the Yeerk comes out of her head and she is freed, I think she could also handle the human role. But that's not till the way end. So those are the only two parents that I'm going to go for now. Maybe at a later time I'll cast Cassie's parents or Jake's parents, maybe even Jake's older brother, but I wasn't too interested in doing that here and now. But Marco's parents are a bigger deal more consistently in the books. Now there's a 15-year age gap between Michelle Rodriguez and Benjamin Bratt. I won't say which one is older and which one is younger, but I think they'll play it more in the middle, closer to each other's age, and it doesn't really matter. So one more, and it is perhaps the most consistent adult human in the series, at least early on, and that is Vice Principal Chapman. Hedrick is his first name, Hedrick Chapman. And for this role, and again, I don't know why, but it seems right, Asif Manvi. The reason I don't know why it seems right is because most of my memories of him as a performer are from The Daily Show, where he was a correspondent, which is funny, and it is comedy. It's not really acting. I guess it is acting, but in a not in a way that he would be acting as Vice Principal Chapman, but he just, and I've seen him in movies too. He's in Spider-Man 2, very briefly. He's in the last Airbender movie, and I know I've seen him. He pops up here and there, but he's also stage actor. He's in the Oklahoma revival on Broadway in 2002, 2003, somewhere in there, and the Tony Kushner play Homebody Kabul. So he's got the theater stuff. He does comedy. I think that he could ride that line between the sinister, what kids consider to be the sinister vice principal, in this case, a sinister vice principal who also is a high-ranking alien invader, and also the more, in later books, when Chapman becomes kind of a Visser 3's fool, not literally, but he fails a lot, and he's always afraid of what Visser 3 is going to do to him. I think Asif Manvi could play the comedy there and the kind of cringing, but also I think he's got it in him to do the more dramatic stuff, like in, I don't know where, again, I don't know how they're going to shuffle the books around, so I don't know where this storyline will fit in with the actual movies, but he's the father of Rachel's best friend, Melissa, and we find out that Chapman, the human, made a deal with his Yeerk that he would not struggle against the Yeerk, fight control of the Yeerk, as long as the Yeerk doesn't try to make his daughter a controller, put a Yeerk in his daughter's head. And I can see Asif Manvi doing that. So I can see him doing the more comedy relief stuff, and the sinister vice principal stuff, but also the dramatic stuff. So that's it. Visser 3, Visser 1, AlFangore, the Elemist, Marco's mother and father, and Principal Chapman. Those are the castings that I wanted to do here, that I had the most to say. I look forward to seeing who they actually cast. And I'm sure that even if I don't initially see the same thing they saw in who they cast, it will make sense when I actually see the movie. And again, if you, watching this, disagree with any of my castings, or not necessarily disagree but think you can do better, or want to cast someone like someone like Prince Zero or the Drode, less prominent adult characters, or one of the kids. If you know the child actor who is perfect to play Marco or Axe or Rachel or Cassie or Tobias or Jake, let me know. I'm really, before it gets set in stone, I love the idea of exploring all the possibilities. So you can comment with that. One more, just if they get around to Hork-Bajir Chronicles for Aldrea, Maisie Williams, Arya Stark on Game of Thrones. I think she got the right personality to fill that role, and then would also be great when she briefly appears in one of the Animorphs proper books. Cast a Hork-Bajir, cast one of the Hamids, or Halpex. Just, ideas. Let's have fun with this before it gets set in stone. The stone won't necessarily be not fun, but it'll be less fun than guesswork and exploring possibilities. Yeah, so that's that. Still looking forward to this movie, and as things develop, hopefully I have more ideas to make more videos, because even though nobody's actually here with me, it's nice to be talking about Animorphs, and maybe getting some feedback from other Animorphs fans. For now, ram the blade chip.